In the past 3 years, the national security law was imposed in Hong Kong, and more than 250 people got arrested. Actually, indeed, the Hong Kong government and the Chinese government have almost controlled the whole society, and the key opposition leaders and journalists, activists inside Hong Kong are either silenced or facing trials. So it is not unimaginable that they now turn their targets overseas, treating these 8 wanted individuals as enemies of the state.
How serious are they about trying to get them back to Hong Kong?
It is quite ironic that even the government officials admitted in the press conference that they have no ways to bring them back, legally speaking. And following the extradition treaties being suspended by many Western countries, as well as the practices of not sending fugitives on political crimes back to home countries, it is very unlikely that Chinese and Hong Kong authorities could use such formal practices to arrest these people in extraterritorial manners. However, we have seen in past years, China has been using many informal practices to intimidate and to silence the dissidents overseas, including the setting up of overseas police service stations, as well as harassment and persuasions for activists returning upon mainland China. It is worrying that these practices could expand to folks from Hong Kong.
So do you think in a large part this is to intimidate people that might have been associated with these 8?
To a large extent, it is true that such bounty warrants are creating intimidations overseas, especially when the Hong Kong government first introduced huge bounties for each wanted persons that may create an incentive for supporters of the Hong Kong government overseas to follow, stalk, or intimidate those people and in order to get the reward.
You know, Eric, we have also heard stories, reports of people living in third countries being bundled into cars and taken out of the country against their will. Are there concerns that with these rewards in place, it might encourage others to even report on their whereabouts?
I think this is a genuine concern, given that what we call a transnational repression becomes a common phenomenon in many Western countries nowadays, when Chinese authorities could use such informal and subtle practices or even violent practices to intimidate or to harass their people outside of their territory. And the incentives given by these bounty warrants, as well as the recent events in Manchester of the UK, when Chinese officials could simply assault protesters without any legal consequences. It would create a stronger chilling effect and worry among the immigrant community of Hong Kong people overseas.
Yeah. You know, you talk about the fact that these extradition treaties, certainly with Australia, we know that that's been suspended. What about Interpol? Could China ask Interpol to issue international arrest warrants for these 8?
Following the constitution of the Interpol, they cannot accept and handle any request based on purely political crime. However, whether China could still make use of the Interpol, especially the red notice mechanisms, to alert the respective countries, especially for those who remain extradition agreements with China or Hong Kong, and that would create another barrier or another obstacles for these 8 wanted activists to travel abroad.
So they have to be very, very careful about where they go, should they leave their bases that they are now living in.
There were reminders or notices from other Western governments, say the UK, who warn Hong Kong activists not to travel to countries where they have whether there are extradition agreements with China or Hong Kong. I guess this issue will become more apparent when there are still many countries, including European countries, remaining their extradition treaties with Hong Kong and China.
You know, it does mean that these people, many who have expressed the desire to return to Hong Kong, which has been their home all their lives, will not in the foreseeable future be able to do so.
The government of Hong Kong today made clear that such warrant could last for life. And it also reflects the government wants to create a firewall between the people inside Hong Kong and the activists and the liberal voices outside Hong Kong. It is very unlikely that this firewall could be removed if the authoritarian practices and the national security law remains in effect in Hong Kong.
Eric, good to talk. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.